Hey, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
So I think I screwed up my stylus.
You what?
Well, I was trying to, set the weight for my tone arm.
Yeah.
But instead of a little turntable weight, I was using the scales of justice. And welcome once again to Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast. No, I did not mess up my stylus. We're just joking around. You know what the scales of justice are. Hopefully that's not a reference that's lost on many people.
Well, at least it's not for our normal crowd gets it.
There we go. Just don't sue us, okay?
Yes.
That is the subject of today's episode, where we're going to be talking about rock and roll lawsuits and the unpleasantries. There's so many different ones when I started looking into this. It's amazing how many different types there are out there.
It's just, it all depends on the creativity of that person that could come up with something. I'm a little short on cash. I got an idea.
Or I'm so angry at Roger Waters. No, it's the other way around. I think. No, they sued. I don't know. I've got it written down. We'll look into it there. But before we get to the subject du jour today, it is a vinyl community podcast. I forgot to mention my name's Jim, and I'm a record store owner.
And I'm Steve, a record collector.
46 episodes in. Hopefully they know what we are and who we are.
Yeah. No, because there's all the new people that keep dialing in.
That's true. Thank you for listening.
Yes.
Check us out. Anyhow, so being a vinyl community podcast, we do like to talk about our pickups from week to week, the stuff we add to our ever-growing collections, much to the chagrin of those around us in some cases.
Yeah, no kidding.
I had a busy week. You had a lesser so.
I did, for once. Now, this is the first. It took to episode 46. I have less records than Jim. So I think that's, kind of a big deal. And I just have two I picked up this week. One was Sheryl Crow's Tuesday Night Music Club I bought here at Radio Wasteland, the reissue. Yeah, for me, it's really the one Sheryl Crow I need. That a greatest hits would be fine on vinyl. But otherwise, this kind of takes care of my Sheryl Crow itch.
Yeah, you can see a doctor for that.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I don't know how long that's going to last, but as of right now, I got it. The other one was a real heavy hitter, and I got this down from Noble Records down in North Carolina. It's a Ngozi family. It is the album Day of Judgment. And Paul Ngozi, and it's called the Ngozi Family, was probably the premier Zamrock band out of Zambia. It rocks hard. There's political songs. There's some that deal more with religion. Some is in English. Some is in whatever language Zimbabwean is. I don't know what it is. But it is one of the premier Zamrock albums. You can get a reissue, which I do have a reissue, but this one came up, an original, and it was pressed in Zambia. And basically, it looks like it was used to cover the roof for a while.
No.
It was used on it fell on the ground in the sand, in a sandstorm. It is really trash. But I knew it. I knew it before coming in. And the price was such, it's still extremely expensive for the crappiest copy that you can find.
Wow.
Now, it's the cover, it's all there. Tape does wonders to keep a cover together. But the fact is, it's a very, very rare album. And I now have it to add to my Zambian collection. So
Wow.
I'm excited about that. It's just I'm not sure my needle wants to touch it.
You have to be such a true hardcore specialist for this particular genre to pull in something like this, don't you?
You have to have a screw loose.
And Noble probably said, you know what? I think I know who would like this.
There is, yes. That is that kind of how it works.
Dylan's like, hi, Steve.
Yep, look what I got.
Oh, no.
What about you, Jim?
Well, I got a heavy hitter in mine, too. And I should mention, by the way, before I get into mine, that we are still putting up a link to a Spotify playlist since the copyright issues, and we don't want to get sued. We can't put music in the podcast, so to speak. So we're putting up a link to these songs that we talk about, the albums that we talk about, so you can listen in. I think I might have my work cut out for me finding that one on
Yeah.
that Zamrock one on Spotify, but we'll see if we can find it in there.
Yeah.
I'll get the info from you. But I did add a heavy hitter myself this week. We'll get to that in just a second. A new album. I am just starting to get into this group, and Goose, or I've heard them referred to as The Goose, and they're considered a jam band. But in listening to them, I don't really equate them that much with the likes of Fish or even further back into the Grateful Dead because they've got more of a modern sound, more of a poppy sound to them.
Okay.
But I picked up a copy of Dripfield. It was a 2023, I think, reissue of that on orange vinyl. And it's a good album. It's a double LP, 3 songs per side, so it moves a little fast. And I'm kind of still getting into this group, but a lot of people love them. They're digging this group. Everybody's like, Goose, man, Goose is the greatest. I'm like, okay. Let me see. But so far, I'm enjoying it. It's a very laid back type of jam band. If they call them that, I'm not sure they fit into that category yet.
Yeah. Well, so you had Django that you just listened to. Now you're into jam.
Yeah.
You're kind of into
working my
the
way there.
J's. Yes.
Okay. Well, then here, how's this one? The other new one I added in is a bootleg of the Cramps. And you know where this is going because
Yeah.
I think you're getting one too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's called You Better Duck, and it was recorded live at Clutch Cargo's in Detroit, Michigan in 1982. And we just listened to a little bit of it before recording the show. And for a bootleg, I've heard worse.
Yes. Absolutely.
And it's the Cramps, and it's live, and you can't expect too much because they're a wild group. But this is a bit of Michigan-related history with this group playing in Detroit. And I'm trying to remember if I've ever been to Clutch Cargo's. There's chunks of the 80s that kind of escape me at the moment. I probably was there in the early 80s, but I didn't see the Cramps. I do know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I picked up an album by the group Flint. Have you ever heard of these guys?
Yeah, I have.
Flint is kind of the discarded membership of Grand Funk after all of everything that went on, but formed by Don Brewer and Mel Shaker and Craig Frost. So Flint's the name of the group. Flint's the name of the town. I've had this in the store a few times before, and I've always passed up on copies. But I found a good white label promo copy of it. So I'm going to add that to the collection simply because. Now, the heavy hitter, are you curious here?
Yes, I am.
All right. This I've had for a little while, but I've never officially added it to the collection. It was in one of my to get to boxes. And I got a little wild hair up my back end the other day because I heard something from Big Star. And I thought, okay, you know what? I do have a Big Star album. I'm going to find it and decide whether or not I want to keep it. And it's Big Star's #1 record. I've got a first pressing of that with a promo sticker on it. Not a promo label, but a promo sticker on it.
Wow.
And this is a group that I really should have known about sooner, but have only really become aware of, in the past year or so.
Yeah.
So doing more research on them, and I dig them. They're cool, and it's kind of an important record for collections, isn't it?
Yeah, what? That's sitting in the back room? Oh man, I have I had an original, but I lost the cover.
Oh.
So it's one of those. But I saved the vinyl on it, and I did buy a repress of it. But yeah, that is just an incredible September Girls. What a song!
The cover on this one is not the greatest because it was promotional. It was used in most likely a radio station somewhere, but the vinyl is nice. And this sucker is no slouch on Discogs at all. I was very surprised. And they did do a Record Store Day reissue of this not too far back either. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, yeah, count me in. I'm on Big Star now. I added this kind of heavy hitter to the collection, and we'll see what happens having it in there.
Yeah, wow. That's such a great album and really important album, I think. And you just think of all the groups that were influenced by them. When you think of power pop, the Replacements even said, this was an influence.
Cool. Well, again, we will put links to a Spotify playlist kind of touching on the music that we talked about in our recent ads. And if there's a couple of others that come up throughout the discussion today, we'll toss them in there too. But look for that on our social media. Check out the Facebook page for Two Guys Talking About Records. And I think we do try to put the link up in the description as well. So if you're listening on Spotify, and just click into the description and you can hit to that Spotify playlist to listen to the songs that we talked about. So think we can get through today's episode at hand without getting sued by anyone?
We'll find out, won't we? You're going to be sorry. We'll just declare bankruptcy. That's what you do.
And now this subject came about because Steve brought up a subject the other day that some dudes were suing reggae. And I guess that's the best way to put they're what? Well, yeah, they're suing reggae. So we'll get to that one here in just a second. But then we started looking into this a little bit further, and I'm familiar with lawsuits. I used to do news, and stuff would cover from here. And I've talked to some of these other, like I talked with Mark Farner a couple of years ago, and this subject of his tiff with Grand Funk came up and everything that he went through on that. So I'm no stranger to the litigious side of rock and roll. But I was still amazed once we started digging into this, just how many different lawsuits and different types of lawsuits between bands and fans and labels and copyright. It's amazing the sheer number that are out there.
We keep lawyers employed very well. And so, lots of lawyers
It's
employed.
like the other arm of the music industry, unfortunately, these days, isn't it? You
Yeah.
kind of have to have that in there.
The dark side.
But let's start off with the one that really kind of brought this subject to the forefront for us. You found this, and I guess, again, the most simple way to put this is that these guys are suing reggae.
That's right. So there is a Jamaican duo by the name of Steely and Clevey. Okay? They claim they have legal ownership to the genre-defying rhythm of reggae, which they call dembo rhythm. And that's the boom, chick, boom, chick, that you will hear on almost every reggae record. They are suing not just a couple people, 150 defendants are in here, including Justin Bieber, Pitbull, and 3 major music companies. They say if they win this, they could create a monopoly on the entire genre because they own the backing.
So they claim that they invented the bass rhythm that is used throughout the majority of reggae music.
Yep, dembo rhythm.
What is, and this is the devil's advocate side of it, what is to stop anyone from saying, I created this blues rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
I created this K-pop rhythm that everybody's emulating and working with. I created the heavy guitar riff, this and that. What's to say that Polka is not going to sue Oompa Loompas for the Oompa sound?
The Bo Diddley riff.
Yeah.
Think how much that's been in there. Of course, if Jimi Hendrix took it, he'd just say, no, I didn't. That's not me.
So it's not the typical copyright lawsuit in this case. This one blew my mind because you're saying, you know what? We're going to sue the genre.
It's right. You know what? Go big or go home. Let's just go all out on this thing. And so somehow they're said, I don't know how old they are because it's been around a long time.
Yes, I was going to say it has. They got to sue the estate of Marley now too.
And now somehow they're going to be able to prove that boom chick is theirs, and everybody's paying us.
Do you know what the status of the lawsuit is, or is it just something that popped up is in the early stages?
It's in the early stages. It should be figured out this year, they said earlier. So
wow.
The entire reggae world is watching.
We're sitting on edge. But, truthfully, the entire music world should be watching because if they get away with claiming this, then you're going to see blues, you're going to see pop, you're going to see heavy rock, you're going to see psych, that all of this is going to come in. The idea of copyright lawsuits has existed for, I think, as long as the more modern music has existed, in the fact that, okay, well, I stole this riff from someone, I copied this, I adapted this. And there are numerous examples of that, but that's down to the individual song copyright level, not an entire genre.
Not the rhythm, but that rhythm is used everywhere. Yeah. Somebody, I guess, had to come up with it, but does that mean that you could do that?
We'll stay tuned and find out. But, with regards to the individual copyright, there are way too many to go through. But, some of the bigger ones that really stand out, and this comes back to Jimmy Page, is at the center of a couple of these, isn't he?
Yeah.
There's the whole debacle with the Dazed and Confused, and that he may or may not have taken that from an American folk singer by the name of Jake Holmes.
Okay.
I did a piece on this for one of our old YouTube shows we had on here, where Jake Holmes actually had a song called Dazed and Confused, was playing it at a club in New York. Young Jimmy Page was there with the Yardbirds, saw him playing this, and for whatever reason decided that eventually the Yardbirds would make a song called Dazed and Confused that sure sounded a heck of a lot like Jake Holmes' version. And then Zeppelin would record a Dazed and Confused, which sounded a little bit like the Yardbirds and a little less like the Jake Holmes version, but was essentially the same song. Now, there was a lawsuit that eventually came out of that. Jake Holmes was eventually given credit on this. But, the Zeppelin lawsuits don't stop there. There was another big one with the band Spirit. Do you remember this one? Mm-hmm. Over the opening riff to the quintessential Zeppelin song, Stairway to Heaven. This one goes back several years, but I think in 2014 is when it really kicked off. What I'd read on this, a journalist by the name of Michael Skidmore lodged a copyright dispute against Zeppelin on behalf of the estate of Randy Wolf, the late frontman from the psych rock band Spirit, claiming that Zeppelin stole the opening riff for Stairway to Heaven from Spirit. And their I forget which song, it was on the 12 Dreams, I believe, album. Zeppelin initially won the case in 2016, but it was revived on appeal in 2018. The U.S. Supreme Court declined to hear the case in 2020. Yeah. This is the slow movement of the wheels of justice, effectively ending it. The case was one of the music industry's most closely watched because the $3.4 million potential settlement at stake was big also, but not to mention that one of the most famous rock bands in history was kind of at the edge on this. So that was a big one of the big ones at the forefront of the whole idea of copyright and whether or not someone was influenced by a riff or they lifted said riff to make their own.
It's interesting. It took till 2014 for this to happen. The
Yeah,
person was gone, so it was just the estate probably saying, well, let's give this a try and see what we can get.
I do seem to remember that there were some rumblings before this actually went to trial. But I think that you're right. I think it didn't get onto the legal footing until 2014.
Yeah.
The idea of copyright also, this one is almost laughable. Do you remember the lawsuit between John Fogerty when he was sued by Fantasy Records for sounding too much like John Fogerty?
Yes.
He was sued for essentially sounding like himself. After Fogerty left Creedence Clearwater Revival, Fantasy Records owned the rights, as much of the record labels did from the late 60s and these. They owned the rights to the CCR music. Well, when Fogerty went solo and released one of his solo tracks, The Old Man Down the Road, I forget what album that was on, the label said, you know what, that sounds a little too much like Creedence Run Through the Jungle. So they sued John Fogerty because he sounded like John Fogerty singing. Yeah. That one, this is even funnier because it came down to Fogerty performing both songs on his guitar in the courtroom for the jury, and they said, no, it's different enough, and they threw the case out. So, but that's bizarre on the copyright side.
It is. Yeah, I copied myself.
Yeah.
On there. I mean, it's like, how much does a record company really own? I guess, they were saying, if that song is our song, you signed the contract, and you can't make anything else that sounds like this.
And I think that this is what's leading to this whole thing. Taylor Swift, not the first to do this, but obviously the more visible one nowadays where they're, you know what, record company, you can have that one. I'm just going to re-record it because I own the songwriting.
Mm-hmm. Which then, I think as we mentioned last time, is now the record companies are putting into their contract that you can't do this for a longer period of time. Yep. Yeah, the Swift effect. So
then I found this other one, and I was not aware of this, but Neil Young was sued by David Geffen of Geffen Records.
Okay.
So Neil Young, obviously, I think he started with Warner Reprise through Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young in the early days. And then I think some of the early Neil Young stuff, like Harvest, was also on Reprise and Warner. So into the early 80s, Neil Young signed a contract with Geffen Records. And David Geffen thought he was bringing in Neil Young from the 70s and 60s. And what he ended up getting was Neil Young from the early 80s. And he ended up suing Neil Young because the first two records on the new label were the albums Trans, which was Neil Young's attempt at electronic music, and Everybody's Rockin', which was essentially a rockabilly collection.
Yeah, which were popular in bargain bins throughout the United States.
So he sued Neil Young, and eventually Neil Young countersued, and that was settled out of court with an apology.
Okay.
Now, the sad thing is there are so many more examples of copyright lawsuits back and forth between labels, artists, and so on and so forth, that we could talk for another 2 hours on this if we needed to.
Easy, yes.
But there is another type of litigation that's somewhat notorious in the music industry, and that's when bands don't get along with their managers or when bands don't get along with themselves.
Yeah.
I think the poster child for this would have to be Roger Waters and Pink Floyd. Would you agree?
Well, there's also rough waters when Roger Waters is around. rough Roger Waters.
Well, the whole issue of the wall and coming off the wall and the dispute, especially, we talk about collectability and early pressings of the wall. Somehow Roger Waters had the credit to him and him alone on the inside. And then later ones had Roger Waters and Pink Floyd naming everybody else. But I think that was kind of the schism that started with them was in the wall. Mm-hmm. And then they produced, I think, one more with Roger.
Yeah,
the final cut.
The final cut, exactly.
So after years of bickering, Roger Waters left, but Gilmour and company wanted to continue using the name Pink Floyd. Mm-hmm. Roger Waters sued them to you can't use Pink Floyd. I'm Pink Floyd.
Yeah.
But no, you're Roger Waters. He also sued them so they couldn't use the giant inflatable pig at their concerts. Yep. On top of it, ultimately, though, they ruled in the case that Gilmour and Wright could use Pink Floyd, the name, and they went on to a lot of other great success without Roger using that name. And Roger, of course, had his solo career. Now he's got issues above and beyond all of this, but in 2013, Waters gave an interview somewhere where he admitted that initial lawsuit was wrong. He said, "Of course I was wrong. Who cares?" Well, it's like, great attitude, Roger, through this. So that's one idea where the bands, and there's lots of other examples of this too.
There is.
So how familiar are you with the whole saga between Grand Funk Railroad and their former manager, and then later Grand Funk Railroad and themselves?
I have no idea about that one.
Well, in 1972, Grand Funk Railroad and their singer, Mark Farner, drummer Don Brewer, and the bassist Mel Shaner began to question the heavy hand of their manager, Terry Knight. Now, Terry was actually the band Terry Knight and the Pack, where Farner had started off with, and then morphed into Grand Funk Railroad, but then Knight kept managing them. The trio had a big list of complaints against them, but basically it was that Terry Knight was taking too big of a piece of Grand Funk's fame, their money, for himself. So the band hired a music industry lawyer, John Eastman, the guy who helped his brother-in-law, Paul McCartney, sue the Beatles, which is a whole other thing there, too. Knight didn't like that and quickly filed suit against the lawyer for interfering with his contractual agreement with the band. And then he sued the band for fraud and breach of contract. And this came to a head as the lawsuits were piling up in an attempt to recoup the money from the band that he felt he was owed. Terry Knight confiscated the band's equipment following a benefit concert at Madison Square Garden in 1972. Okay. So this was just, it kept going and going and going, and obviously they broke free from Knight. But the drama continues for Grand Funk Railroad as the band itself breaks up and then gets back together and breaks up and gets back together. Mark Farner thought that he was a larger part of the band, and one of the reincarnations of the band, he had wanted in the agreement to get half of whatever they brought in instead of 1/3, stating that he was big on there. Now, I talked with Mark Farner, I think it's been a few years now, for one of the old YouTube shows that we used to do here. And prior to setting that up with his management, I got a lengthy letter from his management's legal team, stating what I could and could not call Mark with regards to Grand Funk Railroad.
No kidding.
This convoluted lawsuit that they settled was one of those that said, okay, Mark Farner can be Mark Farner, but he cannot call himself Grand Funk, and Grand Funk cannot refer to Mark Farner in any way. But this came down to just this weirdness here that even dictated the size of the font that the names could appear in on any promotional stuff, which is what they sent me. But it stipulated that Mark Farner's first and last names could appear in capital letters before a reference to Grand Funk Railroad or Grand Funk Railroad, with only the first letters of the band's name being capitalized and the first letter of the words former or formerly capitalized. That's how weird it got, where he could say, I'm Mark Farner, formerly of Grand Funk Railroad, but you cannot capitalize this. And you get the lawyers involved, and that's how messy things get.
That's why we love lawyers, because they can take something super simple and make it extremely complicated.
Now, I did find a couple of other, let's call them interesting lawsuits from the earlier era. In 2005, were you aware that Slipknot, the band Slipknot, sued Burger King restaurants?
No. Nope.
They filed suit against Burger King after seeing the restaurant had put out a new commercial advertising this new product called chicken fries, and they did so with a masked metal band playing music singing about chicken fries. So some Slipknot fans noticed this, and they said, you know what, that looks a lot like Slipknot performing here.
Yeah.
So the band sued Burger King, claiming that they had created a band that looked and sounded like them in order to influence Slipknot fans into purchasing chicken fries. But before that suit could go anywhere, in a big twist, Burger King fought back with a counter lawsuit, arguing that they were effectively doing exactly what Slipknot was doing, i.e. imitating other bands like Kiss, Gwar, and Insane Clown Posse.
Okay.
So both sides eventually dropped the lawsuits, and we can now enjoy chicken fries from Burger King. And then finally, and I know we got a couple more to get to, I found some instances where fans have sued artists for a couple of reasons. A fan sued Don Henley from the Eagles. This was in 2000 when Henley was doing a tour for his Inside job. In Arkansas, the musician did something kind of unexpected when a fan in the audience took a flash picture of him, I'm assuming with a phone in 2000, probably a camera in 2000. He threw a maraca at the fan and hit her in the forehead. So adding insult to injury, then he allegedly gestured toward her and announced to the audience that he didn't appreciate flash photography. The fan was embarrassed and sued Don Henley, accusing him of highly unpleasant mental reactions. She has induced fright, horror, disappointment, chagrin, worry, disgrace, and embarrassment, indignity, ridicule, grief, shame.
Wow.
I'm going to stop here because it keeps going.
Wow.
So I don't think that lawsuit really went anywhere. They probably settled. But there was another one here in Michigan. In 2012, a settlement was released on this. But in 1990, all the way to 2012, Rod Stewart was at a concert, and a woman by the name of Patricia Boughton alleged that she was left permanently disfigured when Rod Stewart kicked a soccer ball into the crowd and hit her in the middle finger. Her husband in the lawsuit added the damages was a loss of companionship to the suit, claiming that it interfered with the couple's sex life. So her middle finger being disfigured interfered with her sex life. They took a $17,000 settlement in 2012 from Rod Stewart, which was a lot less than the $75,000 that they sought. So again, the lawyers kick into this, don't they?
And he bought an inflatable doll to be okay. Oh, hey,
Where you go. You know, as we move into the modern era, there's still more lawsuits. The big one, remember Metallica sued Napster for that. And essentially other bands joined on, and Napster finally caved in and filed for bankruptcy. But one of the big ones, and I want to mention this because when I used to teach, I would bring this up in talking about copyright law. In 1968, the Beatles formed their own record label. Do you remember what that was called?
The Apple
Records, correct. So they had this record label of their very own. Well, in 1978, a young upstart by the name of Steve Jobs started a computer company called Apple. And when he did so, and he has admitted, too, that Apple Records and the Beatles, he was a big, big Lennon fan. So that had to influence the naming of the group, but he denied that, of course. But the Beatles sued Jobs in 1978 for trademark infringement. And that case was settled in 81 on the condition, and this is a biggie, on the condition that, quote, Apple computers stay out of the music business.
Okay. Oh, wow. Did really good there,
Can you guess how well that went when they
yeah.
introduced iTunes? So when iTunes was introduced in it was followed by another lawsuit in 2003, rather, when they introduced iTunes and the iPod. The Beatles, Apple Records claimed that the trademark had once again been infringed upon. A judge disagreed and threw that case out in 2006. Okay. So even into the modern era, we're getting this. But yeah, Apple, we're a computer company. Don't worry about us ever being in music. Well,
Well, and Apple's kind of a common word
It
to
is.
be used. I mean, they use a different picture.
Hey, using those reggae guys, they could sue the fruit.
Yes.
Now, you've got a couple more modern ones as well, correct?
Yeah, talked a little bit about this before, but a little more information. It's the one on AI technology, where
Yep.
AI they're loading in a lot of different songs, like 1,700 different songs. They're loading into an AI computer, and the computer's name's Claude. Of all the names, I mean, how many people use Claude anymore? I mean, I've never met a Claude, but
Oh.
here we got a brand new AI computer, the smartest thing in the world, and we call him Claude. Which is insane.
Maybe there's an acronym in there somewhere.
Yes, but the company is Anthropic, which is a part of Amazon.
Okay.
Yep, and so they are using copyrightable songs to train Claude, to train him to be able to copy and distribute lyrics, or at least that's what the lawsuit says. So
Or even emulate. This is an interesting one because AI is learning from copywritten material,
Yes.
and then emulating it is what they're saying.
Yep, that's what they're saying. They're training Claude to be able to do this. So now, what the company Anthropic says is what's happening is they're generating answers that contain copyrighted lyrics. When it's asked, when it's been specifically asked not to. So they have specifically asked Claude to not do this. But what's happening is he's answering, and he's doing so with kind of prompts on, that might have some of the lyrics in there, or there might be some chord progressions, or even writing poetry that might be similar. Claude is not listening. Now, I know we have no reason to be scared of AI. It's
Nope.
perfectly harmless. I'm just telling you, Claude is not listening to the people at programming him because he's dropping some lyrics out there.
Don't take Claude off, please.
Yes, so kind of scary stuff with that. One of the new ones was Lizzo, which a lot of you have heard about, for fat shaming 3 of her former dancers. And Lizzo is not the thinnest gal in the world, but she was doing this, and so they're saying that she committed disability discrimination.
Okay.
That's kind of a new one.
Okay.
Yep. And the dancers were claimed that they were asked to touch nude dancers, which I guess wasn't very cool.
I heard about this. There was a banana involved in here somewhere, but this is a family show, so we're not going to.
Yes.
We're not going to. You could read that if you need to, but
Exactly. But Lizzo's lawyers, they just claim it's a fabricated sob story.
well, again, it goes back to maybe the fans. Would they have sued Don Henley or Rod Stewart? Maybe they got hit and hurt. Who knows?
Who knows? But what's the biggest sob story? It's about a little baby
Oh my.
on a cover. Isn't that?
Yes, the Nirvana baby.
Oh,
This has been going
so
on
sad.
for quite some time.
Poor guy.
The guy's name is Spencer Eldon. You're familiar with the cover, of course,
Yeah.
of Nirvana's iconic 1991 album, Nevermind. You may not have heard of this. The Nirvana baby is and was a real baby at the time. And he is suing everybody in the world, it seems like. Nirvana's, Kurt Cobain's estate, the label, I don't know if Universal Music, suing the photographer that took the picture as well. Now, this is an odd one because this Spencer Eldon has seemed to have been fine with this image for many years throughout his life, and he kind of played off that fame, didn't he?
Yes, he has. He's been to shows, done autographs, made money off of it.
Yeah, being the Nirvana baby. But now he's in his 30s, and we're maybe surmising that he is needing some fundage for something or other.
Yep.
Who knows? He has been suing, and that was thrown out. I've got to remember my notes here. It was thrown out, but then has gone back on appeal, and it's opened back up just very recently. He's suing for $150,000 in damages from the defendants, as I said, which include Kurt Cobain's estate, the photographer, and Universal Music. He is claiming child exploitation and pornography, saying that as an infant he could not and would not have consented to having his nude picture on this album
Could
cover.
not, would not have consented.
But as I understand, as an infant, his father was paid by the photographer. It was only a couple $100, mind you. But who knew that the album would become what it is, instantly recognizable as this little kid's wang hanging there.
Yeah, and he undoubtedly, father signed a contract.
Undoubtedly, and got paid.
Yes.
But I think his initial arguments were that, he got paid a few $100s, and I was a kid. So what's in it for me, maybe? But this is an odd one. I mean, yes, look at some other, maybe we could do a whole show, a whole episode on album covers that are very, very questionable in this day and age. Think of something like Blind Faith or Scorpions or something like that. This one in the 90s, I guess maybe you wouldn't even have blinked twice. Okay, it's a naked baby on the cover. Swimming in a pool with a fish hook and a dollar bill. Okay, it's artistic in there. But now all of a sudden it's problematic, and he is suing for that problematic nature of it.
I'm just surprised it's only $150,000. That's not going to last him too
long.
No,
this is what I'm seeing. I'm sure it's probably a lot more.
Well, I hope
in there
so.
in some way, shape, or form.
So he can live a good lifestyle and go through therapy to repair what he's gone through in life.
There we go.
Everyone keeps looking at him and goes, "Can I see what else you have?" I mean, he's just had to deal with that.
Am I mistaken, or am I remembering this incorrectly, that at one point didn't he recreate the cover? Obviously wearing a swimsuit as an adult.
I'm really positive he did. I'm very positive. And I think it had something to do with the anniversary of the album. Yeah.
So he went through at least part of his adult life being okay with being the Nirvana baby.
It's just now it's kind of dried up. That well's dried up. His reality show hasn't happened. So, well, what are we going to do? I can't get a job. So let's do this.
Well,
and maybe he does have a job. I apologize if you're listening, Nirvana baby. Sean, was that his name? No. Spencer.
There it is.
I apologize,
I have to move back to my notes. Oh, and I just thought of something else, too, that I saw. This is, again, just recently, that some fans are starting a class action lawsuit against Madonna for being late to her shows.
Oh, wow.
She has recently, I think, been late, up to 2 hours late, starting some of her concerts, and fans are fed up with it. So they're starting a class action saying you need to be more punctual.
Wow. Now, if that one goes through, there is a lot of screwed rock musicians out there. I mean, that's just part of being a rock star. I don't have to show up.
I'm going to walk out when I feel like walking out.
Yes.
Walk off when I feel like walking
Power
off.
to the fans. Power to the fans.
You take a picture, I'm going to throw a maraca at you and cut the concert short.
Wow.
Well, so what do you think? Are some of these frivolous copyright lawsuits? I understand. There's a lot of money to be made for artists. There's a lot of pride if you feel your stuff has been stolen by another artist and made more popular, and apparently in a rhythm of a genre that you can cash in on as well. But I mean, is this something that could be crippling to an artist or to the industry? Is it something that's too much of a distraction for the industry? We're just wanting to enjoy music after all, correct?
Correct. Except Claude is
Except
out
for
there.
Claude.
He's
That's
trying
the
to ruin it
dangerous
for
one.
everyone.
Well, please let us know what you think on this. You can connect to us with the Two Guys Talking About Records Facebook page. Just do a search for that. Or you can look up Steve's YouTube channel and contact him through there, which was what again?
Steve Carlson, Vinyl Community. Extremely creative.
Yes, and it's just like Two Guys Talking About Records. Or you can reach out to me through the Radio Wasteland Records YouTube channel or Facebook page as well. We would love to hear from you folks as we continue to plod forward with this wonderful thing we call a podcast each week.
Yes.
I do have one more thing to bring up to you, sir, if I could. You made a big announcement on your channel last week, did
I did, yes. I am moving to Denver, so from Midland to Denver, and actually I'm retiring from my current job on March 1st. Having a birthday March 2nd.
Wow.
Flying out to Denver March 3rd. And so, yes.
So the big changes are forthcoming. We have discussed what to do with the podcast, and we're going to continue it.
Yes.
It's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but a little different. I think the bigger challenge is not seeing you come in every Sunday, man.
It will, yes. Absolutely, because I am super consistent.
Oh, but we'll still send you vinyl if you need to.
Yeah,
We'll keep up on that.
You know that'll happen.
Well, I am happy for you because there's a lot of big reasons for this, and I think that you're doing a good thing here.
Yeah. Yep.
moving onward and upward.
Exactly. Going out to be a grandpa. Be with my grandson.
That is very cool. Okay, folks, on that note, we are going to wrap things up for this week. And I don't even know what we're talking about next week. We'll figure that out.
Yeah.
That's how we're flying by the seat of our pants. Just don't sue us.
Yes.
You folks have a great week. And until next time, my name's Jim, and I am a record store owner.
And I'm Steve, a record collector.
Again, don't sue us.
Yes, please.
Especially Pauly Shore. Please don't. Or Madonna. Or Lizzo.
Yeah. Or Sean. Spencer.
Or that AI.
Yeah,
Don't
Claude.
tick him off.